Well, for more, joining me from Tel Aviv tonight is Michael Bossaque, Global Affairs Analyst, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. We often speak to him in Ukraine. Michael, you're there in Israel tonight. We often speak to you in Odessa. There have been comments this week from President Zelensky that the Israel-Gaza war is essentially taking focus away from the fighting in Ukraine at a time when there was already this war fatigue setting in. What does this mean for what does this new war in the Middle East mean for Ukraine?
Yeah, good to be with you again. Well, it's not very good news whatsoever. I mean, the big deal for Ukraine, of course, is the big funding bill proposed by President Biden, $106 billion, of which $61 billion would go to Ukraine, and $14 billion has been approved by the House, as you know, for Israel. Not likely to pass the Senate, and certainly won't be approved by Mr. Biden. So that huge money is in the air right now. And also, Ukrainians are very mindful that given the state of the U.S. electoral landscape right now, it could be that the Republicans take over, and Mr. Trump could take over, and that would be bad news for Ukraine. The other quick thing about what shifted here, of course, is media attention. Most of the journalists who used to cover Ukraine are actually here. I've met with them, and this is a very, very expensive war to cover. Whether news agencies will have resources later to cover Ukraine is questionable. So it's a bad time for Ukraine for that attention to be shifted, because the point has to be made that if Mr. Putin is not pushed back in Ukraine, he will go further and further, and the war will become much more costlier, resource-wise, military-wise, and in human lives for the entire world.
There are a number of reports that President Zelensky could pay a visit to Israel. How likely do you see that as being?
Well, if you asked me that 24 hours ago or so, it would be more likely. But apparently his visit was leaked by Israeli television. And there are concerns from his side about security here. He wanted that to come out once he landed here in Israel. But, you know, he really wanted to come here earlier. I think he was rebuffed by the Israeli side. He was one of the first to call Prime Minister Netanyahu and offer support. He's also equated Putin's invasion of Ukraine to also Hamas's attacks here on Israel. So one other quick thing is, one of the Israeli defense correspondents I talked to said that if Mr. Zelensky does come here, he has very high popularity ratings. He's proved himself as a wartime president. Maybe he'll want to stick around a bit longer and give Mr. Netanyahu some advice.
Well, that's a really interesting point, because Mr. Netanyahu is coming to his own war off the back of a lot more political baggage. And I just wonder, what's the sense that you're getting from people speaking to there on the ground about their support for him?
Yeah, a lot of anxiety, Helena, a lot of anger. I mean, just before coming on air, I had a conversation with some internally displaced Israelis. We all ran together to the bomb shelter twice this evening. You only have seconds to reach bomb shelters here. Unlike in Ukraine, you have a lot more time. So, you know, I think for average Israelis, the ones I've spoken to, their sense of security calm has really been shattered in many ways. One Israeli told me this morning that, you know, we used to be able to go anywhere in the world. We'd feel secure, protected by Israel if there was a tsunami or an attack. And now, in our own homeland, we don't feel that. And also there's concern about the equilibrium here between the different groups that used to exist. A lot of this is being blamed on arrogance from the Netanyahu administration, that they just took their eye off the ball. They ignored a lot of warnings, and that his political life here is going to be very limited. Lots and lots of anger at him. And one more thing, he hasn't apologized for what's happened. Many other military and intelligence officials have.
We've literally got about 20 seconds left on the program, Michael, but having been in Ukraine, now in Israel, do you see any parallels in the conflicts?
Yeah, quickly, what I mentioned about the anxiety here, also Ukraine, but the other big factor, of course, is Iran lurking in the background, providing drones to Russia that attack Ukraine, and also providing Hamas and Hezbollah with a lot of support. So that source of violence needs to be dealt with very, very quickly.
Michael Bossack, as ever, great to have your insights. Thank you for joining us here on BBC News, and thank you for joining us on this news programme. We'll have more for you at the top of the hour. I'll see you there.